The story isn't mine. It happened to my grandfather when he was young, but he only told it to me once. Just once. And he made me swear I'd never go looking for the place where it happened. He was a hunter. Spent most of his life tracking deer through the Appalachian woods. He knew those trees better than his own house. But there was one place he never went. Not after that night. It started when he was out hunting late, trying to track a buck he'd wounded earlier. The blood trail was fresh, leading him deeper into the trees, farther than he had ever been before. The sun was low and the woods were quiet, too quiet. No birds, no insects, just his own footsteps crunching over dead leaves. Then he heard it. A whistle, low, slow, coming from the trees ahead. At first he thought it was another hunter. He whistled back, just a quick two-note tune. The same whistle came back, perfectly mimicked. He stepped forward. "Hello?" he called out. No answer, just the whistle again. Closer. A chill ran through him. Something about it wasn't right. He should have seen the person by now. There was no cover, nowhere to hide. But there was nothing in front of him, just trees. He turned to leave. The sun was nearly gone now, and the trail back was long. But the moment he took a step, the whistling came from behind him. He froze. It had moved. It was closer. He didn't turn around, just walked steady back toward his truck. The whistling followed, matching his pace. Slow, careful, always just behind him. He gripped his rifle, ready. But then, it stopped. The woods were silent again. He could see his truck now, parked on the side of the old dirt road. He sighed, relieved. Maybe it was just his imagination. Maybe he had been hearing a breath right at his ear. The whistle, soft, slow. He ran. He doesn't remember unlocking the truck, doesn't remember getting inside. Just remembers slamming the door and looking up, and seeing something standing at the tree line. Not a person, not an animal, just a shape. Tall, wrong. It didn't move, it didn't follow, it just stood there, watching. He never hunted in those woods again, never whistled in the dark, and neither should you. Because if it whistles back, it's already too late. You ever wake up in the middle of the night and feel like something's watching you? You tell yourself it's nothing, maybe a dream, maybe just your imagination. But sometimes it's not. This happened to me years ago when I was camping alone in the deep woods. I liked the quiet back then. No people, no traffic, just me and the trees. I set up camp by a small clearing, cooked my dinner, and crawled into my tent early. That's when I heard it. A soft rustling. Slow. Close. I unzipped the tent just enough to peek outside. The fire had burned down to embers and the forest was dark, darker than I'd ever seen it. But in the clearing, just at the edge of the trees, there was a man standing there. At first I thought he was just another camper. He was tall, thin, wearing a tattered flannel shirt and jeans. But something was wrong. He wasn't moving, not shifting, not breathing, not even swaying with the wind. Just standing there, perfectly still, facing my tent. I whispered, "Hey, you okay?" No answer. I grabbed my flashlight and flicked it on, shining the beam toward him. That's when I saw his face, or what should have been his face. His skin was pale, stretched tight like old leather. His mouth was wrong, too wide like it had been cut and stitched back together. And where his eyes should have been, there was nothing, just smooth, empty skin. My blood turned to ice. I dropped the flashlight. By the time I scrambled to pick it up, he was gone. No sound, no movement, just gone. I didn't sleep. I sat up, clutching my knife, staring at the clearing until the sun came up. When daylight finally touched the forest, I stepped outside. There were no footprints where the man had been. No broken branches, no sign that anyone had been there at all. But I wasn't alone. Carved into the tree beside my tent, deep into the bark, were two words. "See you." I packed up and left. I haven't been camping alone since. and I never will again. I don't tell this story often, not because I don't believe it, but because I do, and I don't want to remember. But since we're here, out in the dark with nothing but the fire to hold back the night, maybe it's time. It happened when I was young, a teenager, maybe 17. My uncle had a cabin deep in the woods, an old place with warped wooden floors and a stone fireplace that never quite warmed the place right. I'd gone up there with a few friends for the weekend, looking for a little time away from town. The first night was fine. We cooked over the fire, played cards by lantern light, told ghost stories just like this one. The second night, though, that was when the fog rolled in. It wasn't a normal fog, not like the mist you see in the early morning. This came fast, thick, like it had been waiting just beyond the tree line. By the time we noticed, we couldn't see more than a few feet past the porch. It swallowed the trees, the path, even the lake down the hill. And then we heard the footsteps, soft at first, crunching over dead leaves, slow, deliberate. Someone or something was walking through the fog just beyond our sight. At first we thought it was another camper, maybe someone lost. But when we called out, there was no answer. Just more footsteps, closer now. One of my friends, Jared, wasn't scared. Probably some drunk hiker, he said. He grabbed the flashlight and shined it into the fog. Nothing, just white swirling mist. Then the footsteps stopped. Silence stretched out heavy and thick, until it felt like even the fire had quieted. And then, a whisper. Not words exactly, just a sound. A breath maybe, right at the edge of the porch. Jared laughed, but it was nervous now. "Very funny," he said, sweeping the flashlight around. "Come on out." Something moved in the fog, a shape, tall, too tall. The light barely touched it before it was gone. Jared cursed and backed up fast. "Okay, nope, we're going inside." We locked the door, sat in the living room, watching the fog press up against the windows like it wanted to come inside. The footsteps started again. They circled the cabin, slow, steady. A scrape along the wood of the outer walls, a tap on the window. We sat there, barely breathing, until dawn. When the sun came up, the fog burned away, and the forest looked normal again. But outside the cabin, just beneath the window where I had been sitting, there were footprints, not boot prints, not bare feet. Long, sharp, deep in the earth, like something with claws had been watching us all night. We left that morning and never went back. My uncle sold the cabin a few months later. I never asked why. But sometimes when the fog rolls in back home, I swear I hear footsteps just beyond the trees. Listening, waiting.